Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a closer look at the New York Giants and continuing our NFL team offseason previews, this time focused on the New York Giants, a team that has a lot going on right now. They just found their new general manager of the future just a couple days ago. The day I'm recording this is January 28th of 2022. So they do not currently have a head coach. They're still in the process of it. That'll be a big part of what we talk about in this video, as well as what they're going to look to do in the NFL draft, NFL free agency, guys they have on their roster moving forward, guys they have to look to re-sign before free agency and during free agency periods. There's a lot to break down for this New York Giants football team. Giants fans, if you're excited, make sure to leave a like and also comment and subscribe, because we have an exciting thing to announce here for our Giants fans in this video. We are partnered with Icer Brands. They're an NFL apparel distributor, and they are going to be sending us free merchandise every once in a while, I believe once or twice a month, to give away to our viewers. This month, we have been lucky enough to receive a New York Giants quarter zip. It is actually a really, really nice quarter zip. Take a look at it here on screen. I really love the look of it. I've gotten to see it in person, obviously, and it looks great. I think this is something that a lot of you guys would really love to have, and we're giving it to you absolutely free of charge. The only thing you have to do to be entered is subscribe to the channel and comment on today's video. Those are the only two things you have to do to be entered for a free jersey, free quarter zip giveaway. Super exciting. I'm hoping that one of you Giants fans are going to get lucky and get this quarter zip. It's very, very nice. Icer Brands, thank you a lot for partnering with us here at Utility Sports to make this happen. Link for their company is in the description, so make sure you guys give them a look as well after today's video. Now for our video preview, we're going to start talking with about new GM Joe Schoen. He came in from the Buffalo Bills, their head coach search. That's a big part of what his priorities are going to be there in New York. Then you look at the roster overview, who they have on offense, defense, and who they're going to have to look to re-sign. Key free agents that they could look to target, and just general free agency notes for the New York Giants. And then lastly, and I think the most important thing for this entire video, is the NFL draft. Of course, the way we're going about this video is the order that they're going to look at everything. They're going to look at who they got at GM. They're going to find their new head coach. Then they're going to analyze their own roster. They're going to go into free agency, and then lastly conclude the offseason with the NFL draft. I think this could be a really great offseason for the New York Giants. Giants fans, if you're excited, make sure to smash that like button right now. Starting here with the new GM Joe Schoen. Like I said, he came in from the Buffalo Bills, and there's a few things we can take away from what his tenure is probably going to be in New York based off of what he did in Buffalo. He was a big part of their draft team, big part of their front office there in Buffalo, and Buffalo's built a very successful team and very successful organization, and he was a big part of it. When you look at some of the things he's going to want to do, he already wants to update the draft room for the New York Giants. Came in and was not happy with the look of the whiteboards and magnets, especially when you consider that Buffalo was fully digital when it came to their draft room. So there's going to be some upgrades for the New York Giants in some of the small areas, some of the little things he's going to want to get better at. But he's also going to be someone who's really going to be competitive, trying to upgrade this roster. He's already made a move for a Bills practice squad player, Antonio Williams, bringing him in a contract. And he's going to also look for a lot of athletes in the draft. You look at Buffalo's draft history. They have a good track record of drafting athletic players on both offense and defense and trying to really get the most out of their potential. And I think he's going to be a great hire for this Giants team. I think he's the perfect fit in New York. He's also talked about not wanting to clear house right away. He wants to get a good look at everyone in the building, get good evaluation. That even includes the players. He's going to take time going through his process and implementing what he wants to do. And that's exactly what you want from a GM. You don't want him to come in and start making moves without knowing everyone. He's going to get to know the guys. He's going to get to know the players. He's going to get to know the staff. He's going to get to know everyone around him first, and then start making moves that he sees fit. And I think this is a perfect fit for the New York Giants. And then he's going to start this off by focusing on a head coach. Right now, there are 4 candidates who I would consider front runners for the New York Giants head coaching job. Let's start here with Brian Flores. Of course, the former Dolphins head coach. Is a very surprising move that they opted to fire him, especially with how well they finished the season. But they chose to move away from him. He did make the playoffs last couple of years, and now he's out there And I would consider him at this point the favorite for the New York Giants head coaching job. Brian Daboll, another guy on here, Bills offensive coordinator, Leslie Frazier, Bills defensive coordinator. It's no surprise to see those two in the top four here when you consider that they just brought someone from the front office in Buffalo into the fold. Of course, he's going to get a look at those offensive and defensive coordinators there from Buffalo. He knows these guys personally. He knows them well. Bringing them into an interview process just makes sense. And they're both very qualified. Leslie Frazier has been a head coach in the NFL before with the Minnesota Vikings. Didn't have a ton of success in that role. Did get them to a postseason appearance once, but ultimately did not last there in Minnesota. But I still think he is a decent head coaching candidate. And then Brian Daboll, one of the top head coaching candidates this offseason. To me, I don't think Brian Daboll is going to be the next New York Giants head coach, even though he's qualified, simply because I think the Miami Dolphins are going to beat the Giants to it. I think the Dolphins are going to heavily favor Brian Daboll and make him their new head coach. So I do not think he will be the next head coach of the New York Giants. Of course, with this hire of Joe Schoen, maybe everything changes. Maybe Brian Daboll would prefer going to the Giants with an executive who he's comfortable with and knows. Perhaps Brian Daboll doesn't want to go to Miami and would prefer New York, but I do think he ultimately lands in Miami. And I think Brian Flores, by default, is going to land in New York here. Patrick Graham, Giants defensive coordinator. This is exactly what I'm talking about with Joe Schoen. He's giving people in the building a chance. He's getting to know everyone around him. Ultimately, I don't think Patrick Graham is going to get the job. He's also now interviewing with the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm not very confident that he'll be the next head coach for the New York Giants. But Giants fans, that should be a relief to you. I think just new staff, new fresh faces is going to be a good thing over time for the Giants. Brian Flores, to me, he's going to be the guy. I think he's going to be the next New York Giants head coach. Of course, I'm recording this January 28th. So perhaps on January 29th or January 30th or, February 2nd or something, we know who the next head coach is going to be. At the time I'm recording this, I don't fully know it, but I think Brian Flores will be the next head coach. Moving on to roster overview. We're looking at the offensive players first here. Key guys under contract going into next season. Quarterback Daniel Jones, running back Saquon Barkley, who's looking to have a really good season, coming back another year off that injury, hopefully fresh and ready to go. Wide receivers, they got a fleshed out wide receiver room with Kenny Golladay, who got that big contract last offseason. Kadarius Toney, who I loved as a pickup in round one last year, his speed, athleticism. There's a lot to unlock yet for him in this offense. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, really good 3 and 4 receivers, I think. I think both of them would be solid threes. And you have a 3 and 4 with those two. I really like them. Slayton can play outside. Shepard can work out of the slot. It's really going to be good for empty packages. This is where Brian Daboll would make a lot of sense as the offensive head coach hire because of his capability to work out of the shotgun. He does a lot of that in Buffalo with Josh Allen. This would make sense. He could utilize a 4 wide receiver set extremely well. Tight end Kyle Rudolph is still under contract. What a great person. Maybe not the biggest football player yet at this point in his career. Of course, had a really great career with the Minnesota Vikings. But I do want to shout him out quick for all the work he does in the community. He is one of the best NFL players when it comes to work in the community and really making himself a staple in that community, helping out people around him, those in need. He does a great job of that. So Kyle Rudolph, he's a great guy to have in the building, even if his production's not going to be what it was 4, 5, 6 years ago. Then tackles, Andrew Thomas, Matt Peart, 2 young guys that were taken in the same draft. Of course, Andrew Thomas, a former top 5 overall pick. And Matt Peart, I think, is a solid tackle as well. But the Giants here, they need interior offensive line help bad. I think they could still use another tackle. There's definite ways to upgrade over Matt Peart, especially when they have 2 top 10 picks this year. And there's a few other ways to upgrade this team as well. So we're going to continue looking at that. But those are the key guys offensively that I see under contract still going into next year. And then defensively, they've got a pretty solid group here as well. I do like the players that they have. Leonard Williams, he's a beast. I'm a New York Jets fan myself, so trust me, I know how good Leonard Williams is. He's awesome. He's a great pickup for the Giants. They did a great job stealing him away from the Jets for only a 3rd-round pick. Azeez Ojulari, I like his upside long-term. Didn't pop as much his rookie season as I would have liked, but I still think there's a lot of room to grow for him. O'Shane Ximenez, a good situational pass rusher. I see him and Azeez Ojulari sharing a lot of snaps this year and rotating in and out for each other quite frequently. Dexter Lawrence is a beast at D-tackle. I love what he brings. Of course, they did lose Dalvin Tomlinson a couple of years back to the Minnesota Vikings. I feel like those 2 teams are so intertwined, the Vikings and Giants, just because of how often they seem to share players. But Dexter Lawrence is a really good D tackle, and I think there's a lot of value with him up the middle. Linebacker Blake Martinez is a tackle machine. Oh my goodness. Guy in the run game is really good. He's someone who's going to get in there, clog holes, fill the run lanes exactly right, and he makes a lot of plays, covers sideline to sideline pretty well. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's got a really good feel for the game, and that's one of the most important aspects of playing linebacker. Then cornerback room, I love what they got. Their defensive back situation is really, really good. James Bradbury was a phenomenal signing a few years back by Dave Gettleman. And Dave Gettleman, a little up and down as a GM, of course, never really figured out the QB spot and some of the other key aspects of winning football, but he did a really good job putting together this secondary. James Bradbury, Adoree Jackson, two really good cornerbacks, two outside guys. Bradbury, one of the better cornerbacks in football. I firmly believe that. I think he's got a really good skill set at that cornerback spot. Of course, last year started off a little slow. He wasn't playing his best brand of football, but as the season progressed, he picked up his play. Then you look at Aaron Robinson, former UCF player. I love what he can bring out of the slot. I think he's going to be their long-term slot cornerback. They also have Logan Ryan, who plays a little bit at safety, can play up in the slot as well. It just gives them a little bit of depth at that safety position and that cornerback spot, which is important. You have to factor in for injuries. He's someone who's going to help you get through those. Xavier McKinney, really good safety pick a few years back. Like what he can be as a deep safety. And there's also some key free agents that we have to talk about, guys that they could potentially lose. And of course, the top guy is Jabril Peppers. He's the main guy they got back in that Odell Beckham Jr. trade, which clearly the Giants won that deal. Phenomenal trade for them. Then you also look at guys like Billy Price, who they traded for from the Cincinnati Bengals a few years ago. Will Hernandez, who they drafted three years ago, I believe. Nate Solder, who they signed a few years ago. Those three guys just haven't really worked out. Those are really the spots where, sure, they're key players, they're notable players, but I don't see them coming back to the New York Giants. I don't think they're going to want to bring these three back. Maybe Billy Price, maybe, but Will Hernandez, Nate Solder, I do not think are going to be back with the New York Giants next year. Tight end Evan Ingram, he's really the wild card here. I don't know if he's going to be back or not. It's going to depend on how Joe Schoen evaluates him, because he does like athletes, and Evan Ingram is fairly athletic, but he has trouble catching the football. And I think that's going to be one of those things that, maybe his time has ran out in New York. I think maybe he probably moves on to another team and the Giants don't look to retain him. Edge Lorenzo Carter could be another situational pass rusher guy. When you have someone young like Azeez Ojulari, having another edge there for key plays could be a nice thing to have. I would think they'll look to bring him back. Depends on what his price tag is going to be if he actually stays in New York, though. Then special teamer Keon Crossan. Not very often you see a special teamer on one of these lists. And for me, he's going to be an interesting player to keep an eye on this offseason because, of course, he was one of Joe Judge's guys. Spent some time with him in New England, and he loved him there. And then he went over to Houston. They traded for him from the Houston Texans. Keon Crossan, he's a really good special teamer. I think the Giants would maybe like to keep him, but again, he was one of Joe Judge's guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. He could be an interesting name in free agency for the other 31 NFL teams. But at this point, I think the Giants maybe still could use him. We'll see what happens with him. He's going to be a cheap contract either way, though. Special teamers don't get paid the big dollars like some of these other positions do, of course. Moving into free agency. Currently, they're estimated to have negative cap space, negative $5.6 million in cap space, according to Spot Track. Again, that is as of January 28th, the day I'm recording this. So there's some room for them to find money, though. That's what Joe Schoen's going to be working on right now with the cap personnel that they have there in New York. He's going to be working on ways to restructure deals, save some money, maybe add a few non-guaranteed years onto contracts to lower their cap hits. He's going to be working with everyone to try and get the money down to open up maybe $15 to $20 million so he can actually make some acquisitions in free agency, because this New York Giants team needs to make some acquisitions on top of retaining some of their key players like Jabril Peppers. They have to add a few guys. So that's what we're going to focus on here. Some key free agent targets. Right now, with them having negative money, it's a little difficult to project who they could go out to sign. I've got 4 interesting names here that I think could apply to the New York Giants and really help them if they want to go that way. First guy for me here is guard Laken Tomlinson. He's about 29 years old, plays for the San Francisco 49ers, and he's been a pretty solid guard for them and part of a really good offensive line unit in general with the 49ers. I think he's someone who could make a lot of sense coming into New York. They need help at both guard spots. And yes, they do have 2 top 10 picks, probably going to take some offensive linemen in this year's draft, but you don't want to have to use all of your draft assets on offensive linemen. If you can find at least one guy to be a starter for you in free agency across the offensive front, that is a huge plus. And for me, Laken Tomlinson's probably the front runner here as a candidate for the New York Giants to really make some sense. Building up their offensive line, you could play him at right guard, could stick him at left guard, put him next to Andrew Thomas. It makes sense either way. This could be a really good fit for the New York Giants, especially considering that they're going to want to run the football better. I think the biggest issue with the New York Giants this year was their offensive line play. You look at their yards per attempt, only about 6 pass yards per attempt. That ranked last in the NFL. You also look at some of the other issues that they had on their team. Of course, part of that too is they had, bad quarterback play the last 5 weeks of the season when you're throwing guys like Glennon out there and Jake Fromm. But you also have issues with the offensive line. You have to get the ball out quicker. They also weren't running the ball super well. They ranked in the bottom 10 in yards per carry. And you have a guy like Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, who's a pretty athletic quarterback. There's no way you should rank bottom 10 unless your offensive line is terrible. And that was the truth for the New York Giants this year. That's really where they need to focus on improving. If they can't land a guy like Laken Tomlinson, maybe they take a stab on a guy like Trey Turner, who's had a few down years. Played for the Steelers, played for the Chargers. Neither spot really worked out very well for him, but was a former Pro Bowler with the Carolina Panthers. Perhaps he can get back on track with the New York Giants. They take a stab on him here. You can probably get him on a 1-year pretty cheap contract based on his latest play and hopefully find a diamond in the rough with this type of signing. Perhaps even if they do bring in Laken Tomlinson, this could be another good depth addition at least, where you say, hey, this guy has experience starting in the NFL. Maybe we could stick him at right guard for a little bit, see what he could give us. And if he doesn't work, we cut him. This could be something where pay him 1 year, $3 million and probably land him based off of his latest performance. For me, Trey Turner does make a lot of sense into New York, just given the fact that they were not going to have to pay him super well, has starter experience, and they badly need to improve their offensive line. And a guy like Trey Turner, when he's playing his best football, is a good offensive guard. Another option here, interior defensive lineman Vernon Butler. Key thing here, look at this guy's sweatshirt in the graphic, a Buffalo Bills sweatshirt. The reason I'm choosing Vernon Butler as an option is because he knows Joe Schoen. It's clear Joe Schoen's going to try and bring in some guys he knows from Buffalo. He's already done it with a guy from the practice squad, running back Antonio Williams. I talked about him in the open. But Vernon Butler has had a really nice career up to this point, had a 6-sack season a few years past with the Carolina Panthers, then was in Buffalo for 2 seasons, and I think has probably built a relationship with some of those guys in that building. And for me, him coming into New York, put him next to Dexter Lawrence, gives you a little bit more size up the middle. He's someone who can get into the backfield, disrupt the run game a little bit. Didn't have any sacks the last 2 years with Buffalo, so he hasn't been into the quarterback like he was in Carolina, or perhaps there is a little bit of room to unlock that with the New York Giants. He's going to be a really solid defensive lineman piece for the Giants. I don't see him being a massive acquisition, but someone who could at least help a little bit on the margins in the run game and the pass game for New York. And then our final option here, this is the one that really flashes, tight end David Njoku. If they are able to get up to that $20 million mark or $15 to $17 million in cap space with some of their restructures, with some of their additional years put onto contracts to open up a little bit of money, a guy like David Njoku could be the perfect fit into New York. He's like Evan Ingram without the drop problem. He has been playing tight end number 2 there in Cleveland, probably looking for a bigger role and a pretty decent payday. And I think the Giants are a team that makes sense for him. Give him probably a 3-year, $21 million deal, maybe 3-year, 24. I think he'll be in that $7 to $8 million range just based off his production at this point, former first-round pick. And he's going to be someone who could be very valuable for this Giants football team. Gives you a little bit more athleticism. I talked about their yards per attempt. Part of the issue with that too is they need guys who can create a little bit more separation. I think getting a mismatch nightmare up the middle with David Njoku, someone who runs out routes extremely effectively, can put him on some zigs as well, and just finds ways to get open. That could be extremely valuable for Daniel Jones, aiding his development. And I think this is a real prove-it year for Daniel Jones. They need to put a little bit more around him, and hopefully that offensive line holds up a little bit better. So Joe Schoen can really get a look at what Daniel Jones is and then go from there. Because if Daniel Jones doesn't have a better year this next year, I think it's his final year with the New York Giants. Moving on to the NFL draft, we take a look at what draft assets the Giants have. They have picks 5 and 7 in the first round, 2 extremely valuable picks, pick 36 in the second round, pick 67 and 79 in round 3, pick 110 in round 4. Round 5, they have pick 145. Round 5, pick 170. And round 6, pick 182. They do not have a 7th round pick this year, but when you have 2 firsts and 2 thirds, that is extremely valuable, especially when you consider what Dave Gettleman was able to net them from the Justin Fields trade. Phenomenal move for them. They are well set for the future now. And I think they have a really good opportunity to better this team for the future and really start getting competitive in the NFC East again. For me here, day 1 targets, a lot of offensive linemen here on the board here for me, day 1. If I were drafting for the New York Giants, I would probably go with 2 offensive linemen at picks 5 and 7. Possibly could see them going a few different ways though. Here's the day 1 targets I think they'll consider. Evan Neal, tackle from Alabama. I think he'll be off the board at that point. If he's available at pick 5, he's going to be their selection. That's basically a guarantee here. Tackle Ike Mekwonu from NC State, really good run blocker, and I think would really benefit Saquon Barkley in the run game. I think they need to get better in that area, and he could really, really help them do that. Tackle Charles Cross. He's the opposite version of Ike Mekwonu, a better pass protector than he is a run blocker, and that could help Daniel Jones a lot. It depends on which way they want to go here. Do they want to try and establish more of a running identity where they focus on time of possession, controlling the football, and then winning with defense? If they go with a guy like Brian Flores at head coach, that could make some sense to me. If they want to run the football a little bit better, Brian Flores historically did not do that with the Miami Dolphins, where he did not run the football often. But you look at the Dolphins offensive line, the Dolphins running back situation, they were not set in those spots. So perhaps he would like to run the football a little bit more effectively and efficiently than he did with Miami if he goes to the New York Giants. Interior offensive lineman Tyler Linderbaum, really great in the run game and a really smart center. He could be the perfect addition at the center position for the New York Giants. He can aid a young quarterback with blitz pickups and pass protection. He's also going to be able to get to the second level, uses his hands well, is mobile enough to get out in space and block. He's one of the dream centers coming out of classes. I could see him being a top 10 pick, and he's well worthy of that. Then there's 2 linebackers here. And this is where you have to analyze what Joe Schoen's may be looking for. I know Giants fans, you want offensive linemen, and if I was in your shoes, I would as well. Don't get me wrong. But we also have to consider Joe Schoen's draft history, what the Bills have drafted a little bit, and his role in that. And a guy that sticks out to me is Tremaine Edmonds. He loves athletic linebackers who are maybe a little undersized, but can get all over the football field, cover out in space. And Devin Lloyd is exactly that. He's phenomenal coming out of Utah. He could be a beast right next to Blake Martinez. Those 2 guys could be a phenomenal 1-2 pairing at the linebacker spot. One of them really good in the pass game, that'd be Devin Lloyd. Another one really good in the run game, of course, that's Blake Martinez. That's a really good tandem. And then Nakobe Dean, another undersized linebacker, but he's a heat-seeking missile. Can get downhill. He's a thumper, and also can get out, cover in space as well. Nakobe Dean, Devin Lloyd, 2 really great linebacker prospects, and I think could make some sense given what the Bills have historically done, and then looking at what the Giants might do based off their current roster. Then I also have an edge on here, David Ojabo. Again, another example of athleticism off the edge. He is extremely fast, has really good burst, uses his hands well. When he gets to the quarterback, the ball's usually coming out. So he is going to be a very good pickup for whichever team gets him. Now, it depends on which system they're running. If he goes to Miami, if former Miami head coach Brian Flores comes to New York, this could make some sense. David Ojabo could be a really good edge pickup for this Giants team. For me, though, I would opt for a tackle and Tyler Linderbaum. That would be the way I would go about it. But at the end of the day, can't go wrong if you split it, go 1 offensive lineman on day 1, and then maybe look at one of those stellar linebackers, or you go with an edge like David Ojabo. The Giants are really well set up, and whatever they do, if they're drafting players from these target lists, wow, they're going to have a great offseason. Day 2 targets here. This is, of course, rounds 2 and 3. Linebacker Christian Harris. So this is an example where maybe they don't go with a guy like Devin Lloyd, or maybe they don't go with a guy like Nakobe Dean. Christian Harris out of Alabama, he could make a lot of sense. He can fly down the downhill. He's also someone who on delayed blitzes could be really productive in that area as well. Chad Muma out of Wyoming, an athletic player. And of course, Joe Schoen knows what it's like taking a guy out of Wyoming, did it with Josh Allen. Chad Muma could make a lot of sense here. Edge Jermaine Johnson, another guy who could win with power and a little bit of speed. He's someone who's been rising up boards. He's been extremely productive in his collegiate career. Tight end Trey McBride, not someone I see them drafting, necessarily, but I think he could be a good pickup. He's an extension of the offensive line in the run game, really good at finishing run blocks. If you get him to the second level, he can pancake linebackers, and he's going to win consistently against cornerbacks and safeties. And then interior offensive lineman here as well. Again, you have to address a guard, and there's another center option out here, Alec Lindstrom out of Boston College. Thayer Munford's really the one that's interesting to me, though. He played a lot of left guard at Ohio State, but occasionally they did kick him out to left tackle, so he's got some pretty good bend. He can pass protect pretty well, but he's also someone who's going to be really good in the run game, and I think the Giants would be really benefited him by taking him probably in round 3 at the very latest. Then moving into day 3 targets, of course, these are rounds 4 through 7. It becomes a little bit more difficult to specifically pick out which players they might be looking at, but this is generically looking at certain position groups. Running back Zamir White here out of Georgia. He's had a great career and was a big part of that championship winning team. Running back Breece Hall from Iowa State, someone who can hit the long ball, extremely explosive, could give Saquon Barkley a little bit more rest. I know they have Devontae Booker under contract as well. He's a pretty nice RB2, but you're looking at the Giants probably taking one anyway, just so they have a little bit more depth. They get him on a decent rookie contract, and they save some money at an RB3 spot at the very least. Linebacker Jack Sanborn out of Wisconsin. I think this is another example of trying to find fit in a guy who down the road could play some meaningful snaps for you. Jack Sanborn, I don't think he's going to come in and be a starter on day 1, but I do think he could sit on special teams for a little bit, and then down the road maybe take over for Blake Martinez a couple years later. Interior defensive lineman Haskell Garrett, he's actually pictured on the graphic here for you. He's a big man. He is someone who you could put up the middle. If they don't look to find a D tackle in free agency, perhaps you bring him in, put him next to Dexter Lawrence occasionally, gives you a little bit more depth at the defensive tackle spot on that interior defensive line. That is extremely important. And then edge Jeremiah Moon, an athletic edge, someone who I think could fit in. If they don't draft an edge on days 1 or 2, I would think they would have to take one at some point just to get a little bit more depth into their pass rushing room. And a guy like Jeremiah Moon would do that for me. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. Thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Those are the some of the most important things you have to do for that quarter zip giveaway. And also make sure to comment. It could be something as simple as the words quarter zip giveaway, or it could be, hey, I want that New York Giants gear. Something like that. Just comment anything on the video. It could be about the video itself as well. Remember, here is the quarter zip. It is extremely awesome. Shout out to Icer Brands again. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.